Welcome to Relation Tales. Please like this video and subscribe Relation Tales. We're grateful for each and every one of you. Let us know where in the world you're tuning in from. We'd love to hear from you in the comments. Let's begin. People think betrayal arrives loudly, shouting, slamming doors, tears on the kitchen floor. But mine didn't. Mine crept in quietly, hiding inside routine. My name is Julian Cross, and for 11 years, my life followed the same pattern. Wake before sunrise. Coffee brewed exactly 3 minutes. Soup pressed the night before. A quick kiss on the cheek from my wife, Harper Cross, as she scrolled through her phone, already elsewhere in her mind. She used to look at me when she said goodbye. That stopped long before I noticed. Harper wasn't cruel. That was the problem. Cruelty is obvious. It leaves marks. What she did was subtler, withdrawn smiles, delayed replies, excuses that sounded reasonable if you didn't replay them at night. I'll be late. Client thing. Dinner without me. Okay. I'm exhausted. Rain check. At first, I blamed work. Then stress. Then myself. I started running longer in the mornings, hoping exhaustion would quiet the questions. I reorganized the garage twice. Cleaned things that didn't need cleaning. Anything to avoid the empty space where certainty used to live. Harper, meanwhile, changed in small ways that didn't trigger alarms. New perfume, worn lightly. Phone always angled down. Laughing at messages she never shared. And then there was Ryan. She called him a network contact. Said his name casually. Too casually. Ryan Fletcher. I never met him. Never needed to. His presence lived in the pauses between her words. In the way she smiled at nothing. In how she suddenly cared about looking flawless on nights she claimed didn't matter. The first crack came on a Sunday afternoon. I was folding laundry when her phone lit up on the bed. She was in the shower. The name flashed once before disappearing. I didn't touch it. Didn't need to. What broke me wasn't curiosity. It was recognition. That message wasn't meant for me to see, but it wasn't meant to be hidden either. It assumed trust. It assumed blindness. That night, Harper kissed my cheek and told me she loved me. Her voice didn't shake. That's when I knew. I didn't confront her. I didn't accuse. I didn't beg. Instead, I started watching. I noticed how she dressed differently when she said she was working late. How she checked mirrors she used to ignore. How she began guarding her calendar like it was a vault. I learned something important during those weeks. Harper wasn't just cheating. She was building an exit, and she thought she was doing it quietly. What she didn't know was that every lie leaves a pattern, and I've always been good at noticing patterns. I traced schedules, cross-checked timelines, watched how her mood lifted after certain meetings. And when I finally dug deeper, the truth wasn't shocking. It was calculated. Ryan wasn't single. Ryan wasn't free. Ryan was married, and his wife had no idea. That's when my anger changed shape. It stopped being loud inside my chest and became sharp, focused, purposeful. I wasn't going to explode. I wasn't going to lose control. I was going to end this in a way Harper would never forget. Not with screaming, but with precision. And the first step was reaching out to the one person who deserved the truth as much as I did. Ryan Fletcher's wife. I waited 3 days before reaching out. Not because I was unsure, but because timing matters when you're about to pull someone out a lie they didn't know they were living in. During those 3 days, I watched Harper move through our house like a guest who already had her bags packed. She hummed while brushing her hair. She smiled at her phone, then locked it the second she noticed me nearby. At night, she turned away from me in bed, claiming she couldn't sleep, scrolling endlessly with the screen dimmed low. I lay awake beside her, memorizing the rhythm of her breathing, wondering when love had quietly turned into convenience. Every morning followed the same routine. Coffee. Silence. A quick, have a good day, delivered like a habit instead of a feeling. She left earlier than usual now, always dressed just a little too carefully for someone who said she'd be stuck in meetings all day. I didn't confront her. I didn't ask questions I already knew the answers to. Instead, I prepared. By the 4th morning, I sent a message. It was simple, direct. No accusations. Hello, Elena. You don't know me. My name is Julian Cross. I believe we need to talk, privately. I expected denial, or silence, or anger. What I didn't expect was how fast she replied. Who are you? Why are you messaging me? Is this about Ryan? 3 messages. 30 seconds. That alone told me everything. We met 2 days later in a quiet cafe across town. Neutral ground, far from familiar places. Elena Fletcher arrived early, sitting rigidly at a corner table, her hands wrapped around a mug she hadn't touched. She looked composed, but her eyes kept darting to the door. She wasn't dramatic. She wasn't loud. She was careful, the kind of woman who trusted deeply and would be shattered deeply. I didn't ease into it. "I'm married to Harper Cross," I said calmly, taking the seat across from her. "She's been seeing your husband." Elena didn't flinch. She exhaled slowly, as if something heavy had finally been set down. "How long?" she asked. I told her the truth. Dates. Patterns. How long the lies had been growing. I didn't embellish. I didn't soften it either. Lies thrive on vagueness. Truth needs clarity. She listened without interrupting, her fingers tightening around the mug until her knuckles went pale. "I knew something was wrong," she said quietly. "He changed. Not in obvious ways. Just distance. Like he'd already left." Her voice cracked once. She recovered quickly. "What do you want from me?" she asked. I met her eyes. The truth. And a clean ending. That's when I told her my plan, not in detail, but in principle. No shouting. No public scenes. No chaos. Exposure through paperwork. Through facts. Through calm. The kind of ending that leaves no room for rewriting history. Elena was quiet for a long time. When she finally nodded, it wasn't hesitant. "Then let's do it right," she said. Together. From that moment on, everything shifted. Harper didn't notice the change in me at first. She assumed my silence was resignation, that I was drifting, emotionally shrinking, making it easier for her to justify what she was doing. She was wrong. I became sharper, more present. I listened when she talked, nodded at the right moments, smiled when expected. I played my role perfectly. Inside, though, I was rebuilding myself. I stopped asking why she did it. That question only drains you. Instead, I asked what kind of man I wanted to be after this was over. I wasn't interested in winning her back. I was interested in reclaiming my dignity. Meanwhile, Harper's confidence grew. She stopped hiding as carefully, took longer to respond to texts, started working late too, sometimes 3 nights a week. She began treating me like a safe place to land between thrills, predictable, dependable, unaware. She even said it once, without realizing how cruel it sounded. "You're so steady, Julian," she told me over dinner one night. "I don't know what I'd do without that." I smiled and cleared the plates. Steady, she thought, meant weak. Ryan, on the other hand, was unraveling. Elena shared things carefully. Nothing invasive, nothing excessive, but enough to confirm what I suspected. He was growing careless, arrogant, comfortable. Men like him always do. He talked about the future with Harper while assuring Elena that work was just stressful. He made promises to both women, assuming time would protect him from consequences. That's when we chose the date. A Friday evening. A restaurant Harper loved. Elegant, discreet, familiar. The kind of place she felt powerful in. Elena and I would arrive first. Harper and Ryan would walk into a truth they couldn't escape. I didn't tell Harper anything was wrong. I invited her to dinner casually. "Let's go out Friday," I said one morning. "Just us. We've been distant." She hesitated, just for a second. Then she smiled. "Sure. That sounds nice." That pause told me everything. The night before, she stood in front of the mirror longer than usual, choosing her outfit carefully. She kissed me before bed, lingering just a little too long. Guilt, I realized, often masquerades as affection. I slept deeply that night, calmly, because when you've already mourned something, confrontation loses its power. The next evening, I buttoned my jacket, checked my reflection, and felt something unexpected. Not anger. Clarity. This wasn't about humiliating her. It wasn't about revenge fueled by rage. It was about ending a chapter cleanly and walking away stronger than I entered. And Harper had no idea that by the time she sat down at that table, her carefully constructed double life would collapse, quietly, completely, and permanently. The restaurant glowed with that soft, flattering light that makes everyone feel a little more important than they are. Elena and I arrived first. She looked composed in a dark blue dress, elegant without trying too hard. There was no bitterness in her expression, just resolve. The kind that comes from someone who's already grieved privately and decided not to beg anymore. We didn't speak much while we waited. Words felt unnecessary now. Everything that needed to be said was already set in motion. I ordered sparkling water. She did the same. I noticed my hands were steady. That surprised me. When Harper walked in, she was laughing, mid-sentence, head tilted slightly, completely unaware of the shift in the air. Ryan was beside her, hand hovering just a little too close to her lower back, the kind of familiarity they probably thought no one noticed. Harper saw me first. Her smile froze. Then her eyes moved to Elena. Confusion flickered across her face, followed quickly by irritation. She took a step forward, clearly trying to regain control of the situation. "What's going on?" she asked, her tone sharp but contained. "Why is she here?" Ryan stopped walking. Color drained from his face so quickly it was almost impressive. Elena stood before I could say anything. Her posture was calm, dignified. "I'm Elena Fletcher," she said evenly. "Ryan's wife." The word wife hung in the air like a dropped glass that hadn't shattered yet, but would. Harper turned to Ryan, her mouth opening, then closing again. He didn't look at her. He couldn't. "That's not." Harper started, then stopped herself. She turned back to me instead. "Julian, explain this. Right now." I gestured toward the empty chair across from Elena. "Sit down," I said quietly. Everyone deserves to hear the truth without shouting. People nearby pretended not to stare. Waiters slowed as they passed. The tension had a weight to it now, pressing down on the table. Harper sat, her movements stiff, her confidence faltering. Ryan followed. Though he looked like a man walking into a verdict he already knew he'd lost. No one spoke for several seconds. Finally, Elena placed a slim folder on the table. "I found these last month," she said calmly. "Hotel charges, calendar overlaps, messages that didn't quite add up." Ryan swallowed hard. "I was going to tell you," he muttered. Elena didn't even look at him. "You were going to keep lying until it stopped being convenient." Harper shot me a glare. "You went behind my back." I met her eyes. "You did that first." Silence. She leaned back, crossing her arms, trying to regain ground. "This isn't fair. You're twisting things. Ryan and I. Word honest," I finished. "That's all that matters." Her voice rose despite herself. "So what? You ambush me in public? You think this makes you look noble?" I shook my head. "No, I think it ends this without lies." I slid my own folder forward. Inside were documents, clean, precise. No threats. No insults. Divorce paperwork. Harper stared at it, stunned. "You planned this," she whispered. "Yes," I said, carefully. Her expression shifted, from anger to disbelief, then to something like fear. Ryan finally spoke, his voice shaky. "Julian, man, let's not do this here. We can talk privately." I looked at him, really looked at him for the first time. "Private is where you hid," I said. "This is where it ends." Elena stood again. "I'll be filing as well," she said quietly. "I wanted you to hear it from me." Ryan reached for her hand. She stepped back. "No," she said firmly. "You don't get that anymore." Harper's eyes darted between us, the reality closing in. "You're overreacting," she snapped at me, desperation leaking through her voice. "People make mistakes." I nodded slowly. "They do. But patterns aren't mistakes." She pushed her chair back abruptly, standing. "You think this makes you strong?" I stood as well, meeting her gaze evenly. "No. Walking away without lying to myself does." For the first time that night, Harper looked truly lost. Elena picked up her purse. "I'm done here," she said. "You can mail your lawyer's response." She looked at me. "Thank you for telling me the truth." I nodded. "You deserved it." As she walked out, Ryan slumped back into his chair, hands covering his face. Harper remained standing, staring at the papers like they might disappear if she refused to look long enough. "You didn't have to humiliate me," she said quietly. I lowered my voice. "I didn't. I ended a lie. You did the rest." She grabbed her coat and stormed out without another word. I stayed seated for a moment longer, letting the noise return to the room. The clink of glasses. Soft conversation. Life continuing, indifferent to broken promises. When I finally stood, I felt lighter than I had in years. Not because I'd won, but because I was free. The silence after the storm was unfamiliar. Not empty, just quiet in a way that felt earned. The apartment felt larger when I returned that night. No tension humming through the walls. No footsteps pacing while pretending everything was fine. I set my keys down, loosened my jacket, and stood there for a moment, breathing in the stillness. For the first time in a long while, my chest didn't feel tight. Harper didn't come home. She sent one message just after midnight. I need time. I didn't reply. Time was something she'd taken without asking. I wasn't going to chase it anymore. The next few weeks passed with a strange clarity. Conversations with lawyers were short, factual. No arguing over memories. No rewriting history. Just decisions, clean and final. Elena and I exchanged a few messages. Nothing emotional. Just updates, confirmations, closure. She told me she'd moved into a smaller place closer to her office. Said it felt like breathing again. I understood that feeling completely. Harper, on the other hand, unraveled slowly. Friends reached out, carefully at first, then more openly. Stories have a way of spreading, even when no one raises their voice. The truth doesn't need volume. It just needs consistency. She tried to call me one afternoon, then again the next day. I didn't block her number. I just didn't answer. Not out of cruelty, but because I finally respected myself enough to stop reopening wounds that were already healing. One evening, weeks later, she showed up at the apartment unannounced. She looked different, smaller somehow, less polished. The confidence she once wore like armor was gone. I didn't think you'd really do it, she said quietly, standing in the doorway. I did, I replied calmly. She swallowed. Ryan isn't who I thought he was. I nodded. That's usually how it goes. She looked around, taking in the space, the changes I'd already made. You're doing okay. I am, I said honestly. She hesitated, then asked, did you ever think about giving me another chance? I didn't answer right away. Not because it was hard, but because the truth deserved care. I thought about who I became when I ignored my own boundaries. I said, and I don't want to be that person again. Her eyes filled, but she didn't argue. That told me everything. After she left, I sat by the window, watching the city lights blur together. I wasn't angry. I wasn't triumphant. I was steady, and that was better than revenge. The months that followed were quiet but purposeful. I returned to routines that felt like mine again. Morning runs without headphones. Cooking meals I enjoyed instead of compromising. Calling friends I'd neglected while trying to hold together something already broken. I didn't rush into anything new. Healing isn't dramatic. It's repetitive, gentle, honest. One afternoon, I ran into Elena by chance at a bookstore. We exchanged smiles, a brief conversation about nothing important. She looked peaceful. So did I. As I walked home, I realized something important. The real victory wasn't the dinner. It wasn't the papers. It wasn't watching lies collapse under their own weight. It was choosing clarity over chaos, choosing dignity over destruction, and choosing to walk away without carrying bitterness into whatever came next. That night wasn't the end of my story. It was the moment I finally stopped living inside someone else's deception and started living honestly on my own terms. And that was enough.